And did all these stories only kick in when he was financially in really big trouble? Or did you ever come across evidence that maybe he was peddling these stories before then when he didn't need to?
I've met people, Nicola, in car parks even, that I had a coffee with. And to be fair to DJ Carey, I had to interview a lot of people. And there were signs of him being maybe fascinated with illness from an early age. Now, the other side of this story is that he was hurling at a high level, so he was bound to get injuries. He was bound to have issues with hamstrings. He was driving a lot of miles around the country as a salesman as well.
Yeah.
But some of it doesn't add up when you put all the stories out in front of you. And I know sometimes there's discrepancies with reporters. Maybe you take a note of something and somebody else takes a different note. But sometimes the contradictions are huge. You know, was it tonsillitis or was it something else? There was always drama.
And was he always throwing this out in interviews? He was the one who was...
Oh yeah, he spoke about a car crash at one stage. And he was, you know, there was great worry about him. Would he be back in time for the championship? Somehow he always made some kind of Lazarus-like recovery, and he'd be back, and there'd be loads of headlines, DJ's back, you know, this kind of stuff. And not to say that he wasn't injured at times, like everything in DJ's life, when there's a grain of truth in it. And now when we're questioning everything, it is so hard to say what's fact, what's fiction.
And there's a difference there between claiming you have an injury to look for attention for a headline or claiming you have an illness to look for money.
Correct. Yeah.
So you have something else, something changes really within him. The motivation maybe of that, the attention.
Yeah, and he
turns
wore
to money.
bandages a lot. He wore plasters and bandages, and I'm not sure why he did that. Maybe he needed them. Or there's certainly questions around, did he do things like that at times to appear more heroic? In his own video about his life in 2003, there's a little extract in there that I replayed and I watched it. And I've watched it a few times, and he's describing this hurler being taken off a pitch, maybe with blood all over him, really badly injured. And then DJ smiles and he said the hand goes up and everyone goes wild that hurler is okay.
Yeah.
But it's the way he tells the story. He's excited that. And that means absolutely nothing. Do you know, at the time, it's just when you look back at all these things now, I suppose we've a different lens now, we've a different perspective.
And did he start small with the looking for the money and the tales, or did he go in right from the beginning with those, you know, you spoke about he'd work out your finances and how much he could screw out of you, but like, did he go for the big people early on?
Well, he went for the big people from 2014 on. But prior to that, I know that he looked for a loan of 10k off a man in 2010. And I've seen some interactions on text between them when that man tried to get that money back years later. So things were going well for this businessman in 2010. He knew DJ, he knew Sarah. He said Sarah was absolutely lovely. He said he had very nice interactions with her. He said that DJ as well, you know, everything we've read about and thought about, and prior to all this, he confirmed lovely, down-to-earth guy. And he said that he never mentioned cancer to him, but he said he needed to get tests in America for health issues. And could he borrow 10 grand? And this man is a massive fan of hurling. He said, yeah, no bother, DJ, I'll give you the 10. And he agreed he'd pay him back soon. And he said, look, don't be under pressure, but gave him the 10k on the understanding he was going to get that money back. This was just temporary. And he told him not to tell Sarah, to keep it. It was just between the two of them, let's say. So anyway, DJ Carey didn't pay the money back. And around 5 years later, this man, you know, things had taken a turn. Maybe he needed the money back. And he was looking at DJ Carey going off. He was posting on his Facebook page about going to the Super Bowl, about going to the Augusta Masters in Seattle. And he sent DJ some messages saying things like, DJ, you're making a cunt to me now. Sorry for my language, but this is what
he said. Yeah. But you would think.
Well, yeah, he thought, come on now, this fella is really like, I need
where's my money?
Yeah. And everybody is wishing him well. He's on these exclusive golf trips. Now, I don't want to exaggerate this whatsoever, because from 2015 on, we don't think he even travels to America, by the way, but there was this period around 2014 when he was there a few times. And this seems to be around the time when he was relying on the generosity of Dennis O'Brien. I don't know if the two things are connected, but the two things are there. So he was going on trips to America around that time. He's photographed on golf courses. He's telling people where he works, where he worked in then the IT Carlow, now SCTU. I know lots of people that work there and from the locality. They said, Jesus, Eimear, we couldn't believe it. DJ was in here in the canteen. And like, we know how much he'd be earning here because he was an ambassador for hurling there, and he'd do a bit of coaching and stuff. And they said he'd come in and he'd say, next day, I'm off to the Super Bowl, lads. They thought this was extraordinary. So, you know, they just thought this was mad stuff.
For sure. And how many people did he defraud as such? I mean, there's obviously a selection that have been handled through the courts and that have
23 as regards the Garda investigation.
Yeah.
I honestly do not know how many. I am sure there are people listening to this podcast who've been duped by DJ Carey. Feel free to contact the Gardaí in Waterford Garda Station. I have an Excel sheet and people would tell me, and they don't want their names used. In a lot of cases, they gave them cash. Men don't, you know, it's very humiliating. It shouldn't be, because...
You see, there's that. There's the humiliation, right?
This is hard.
But there's also, you have to be able to prove that you had the money, because sometimes if somebody asks you for a loan, you might give them money that you probably might need, you know, if you had money that you shouldn't have had, or that was stashed away and that you hadn't declared.
Ah, yeah. You've
so people who haven't declared
concerns as well.
Exactly.
You know, there's all those things. There's different reasons. And I suppose my pitch to people when I went and met them was, listen, I heard you gave DJ 10, or you gave DJ 20, or you gave DJ 70, or you gave DJ 120. I sat down with people from €100 all the way up to 120,000. Dennis O'Brien didn't speak to me, by the way, but another businessman did, who gave him 120. Lovely man. And like, so they're all relevant, because everything's relative, you know, in terms of wealth. And same story, just tweaking it or whatever, different kind of, same type of thing though. And lads were very nervous. So say somebody would say to me, listen, I know a fella, but like, don't tell him I gave the phone number. So I'd ring that guy and he'd be so nervous. And eventually I'd say, look, just tell me how much you gave him. And I don't need to know anything else. Just screenshot the message, send it to me, or any way you can give me any information. And some people were very honest, and some people were terrified as well, and there was no interaction with them. But there are decent people out there, and they found ways of letting me know, I gave him this and I gave him that. And I'd lob all the details into an Excel sheet, and I would say, Nicola, close enough to 50 that I'm aware of. But as I say, some of the amounts were small, some of the amounts were large, and many people did not report this to the Gardaí. And you'd have to ask as well, you know, were the GPA duped? Thomas Butler is an extraordinary man. He's one of the victims, and I would describe him now as the star witness for the prosecution. One of them, there's a couple of them that are they're incredible, brave people. Because Tommy was such a good friend of DJ's, he thought that he was a special friend, all those things. It was very hard for him to go into court and to describe the fraud and what had actually happened to him. He just did not want to do that. You know, it wouldn't be his first option. But he found, you know, he had to do that.
He was devastated.
He was absolutely devastated. He was devastated because DJ Carey was his hero. Kilkenny hurling is everything to Tommy, because, like, I know because he had even a photograph of DJ Carey with one of his children and another relation in the hallway of his house. He was so proud when someone would come in and show them. He had a hurley signed by DJ. He had a jersey. These things, when he met me one day, he had them in the car and he wanted to show me. And then when I started reading through the messages, and the level of the deceit. And Tommy, this is where the GPA came in. Tommy actually wrote a character reference for DJ because he truly, honestly believed he was very ill. Remember, he thought he was dying of cancer, and DJ's been telling him this for a long time, over a period of time. Didn't just happen, you know. With some people, he did it very swiftly. With Tommy, it was slow. And Tommy was about to retire and was coming into a lump sum for his pension. And DJ may have gotten some kind of sense of that, maybe, or I'm not sure, but when Tommy had no more money to give him, he was tapped out. He said to DJ, listen, I have not a limitless, resource here. I can't give you any more money. I want to help you. We need to get people on board with fundraising for you. So DJ put him under a lot of pressure. He was away at one stage, And he got a phone call to say, Tommy did, to say, will you write me a letter I want to send it on to Ciarán Barron, the GPA, to ask them to help. Because he didn't want to do what Tommy suggested would be too high profile, would say like an event or whatever. So Tommy obliged, and he wrote a letter saying that to the best of his knowledge, and I've seen the letter, that he knew DJ Carey, and that to the best of his knowledge he was going for treatment in America, all those things. And I think the amount was 20,000. It was somewhere between 20 and 25,000 is my recollection. And I don't know, did the GPA pay it or not? There's lots of reports saying they did, but they didn't confirm or deny this to me. If they did pay it, why aren't they part of the Garda investigation? What's the story with that?
They haven't made the complaint, obviously.
Yeah.
It sounds as if, and in many cases of many fraudsters, this starts, it was explained to me at one point, it's like as if they're juggling and the balls are all in the air. It's like a gambler nearly, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like it's becoming the whole situation, the amount of lies he's telling, the amount of people he's duping, it must be at some point becoming overwhelming for him. And is he glad when the house of cards falls? Is it a relief to him, do you think?
I wonder, and maybe it is. So, like, I got insights from people close to him. There wasn't much in terms of revelations in the court for me the last few days, but there were a couple of things that I wouldn't have known in relation to the Garda investigation in particular. So we heard during the recent hearings and sentencing of DJ that he made some admissions very early on when he actually contacted Gardaí and asked, and they advised him to get a solicitor. He asked to come in and be questioned because they were honing in on him at this stage. And DJ kind of, I assume he could feel that pressure. And he was living, the judge described it, he was living as a pariah. He was sleeping in his car. He was in the car park of a hotel. I had heard stories, by the way, that he was at one stage in the locker rooms in Mount Juliet, and at another stage in recent times that he checked into, before he was arrested, that he checked into the Lyrath Estate Hotel when he was homeless, that he stayed in the room for the bulk of that period. Very good sources that told me he was up in the room, claimed he had COVID, hardly ever came down, everything was delivered up to the room. Actually only left a small unpaid bill there. So paid for most of his stay, and it was a prolonged period, like it was well over a month. It was, whatever it was, 7 weeks or something in the Lyrath. So that's not your typical homeless person.
No.
No. But then the sad stories about the car park and this guy with his All-Ireland medals, everything was in a black sack at one stage, because he was kicked out of wherever he was staying.
His whole life had spiralled out of control.
It spiralled. Somebody said to me, like, there was pictures, there was his All-Stars, his photographs with Tiger and the likes. Oh, somebody collected his belongings and said, like, painted a very sad picture. It's all in the book, these details of like a man under pressure, letters from the bank, for maybe fraudulent documents among the stuff. There was a strange letter in the mix as well.
And what was he spending all the money on?
There's a sense that he was, what, as you described, we don't have all the answers, right? Because I don't have DJ Carey's bank statements. But from what I have, I could see he was robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's evidence that he was, for a long time, trying to pay back maybe some of his loans. And he complained about that himself, about revenue in the banks and being hounded for money. But you see, he got the debt settlement in 2017. So you'd think that all his issues were done and dusted.
Or certainly the vast majority of them. You
would think so, right? But yet the borrowing is much more frantic after that period. So that's where it's, there's still questions about, because he has high life, but he also has low life. So you might say, oh, sure, he spent it. And he certainly liked to spend money. And why would I say that, or how can I say that? Well, I can say that because I sat with somebody who was very friendly with him for years, who said they used to give him money to tie him over the weekend, always cash. Now, they got it back, right? This was someone that was regularly got the call for a weekend away. He'd need a minimum $2,000, $2,000 to $3,000. So DJ couldn't get through the weekend without the $2,000 to $3,000. And that I asked that person, like, what would he spend that money on? And they said, well, listen, he wouldn't go to a normal hotel. He would go to the very best hotel, the suite. That I got the Walter Mitty type story again, that he lived in a different universe to most of us. And this is a guy that, would have his breakfast out. He'd have his dinner out. the launderette would do his washing. He didn't know how to turn on machines like that. You know, he'd lived in a different world.
You still go a long way to hit 2,000, would you, over the weekend?
Still, it's a lot of money.
Every weekend, whatever, about 1 or 2 weekends. But
it's a lot of money. I don't have evidence of... I've asked people about this, like, what's he addicted to? I asked one man, what is he addicted to? And he said, really straight, and this is a man who loves DJ Carey, he said, Eimear, he's addicted to telling lies to get money.
Which is in itself almost compulsion. Because it's to, you know, from my experience, I did a podcast there recently called The Gambler about a man who was, he had a gambling addiction, but he also had an addiction to duping people for smaller amounts of money, but with a big effort, you know. He sadly passed away recently, actually, Pat Sheedy, but he was a really intriguing character because it started out to this project because he'd presented himself as somebody with a gambling addiction. And it was because of the gambling addiction that he had conducted all these frauds over his life. He had 100 previous convictions and all the rest of it. But when you dug into it, it seemed as if the addiction was to duping people and the money was thrown away into the gambling nearly because it wasn't of value to him or something, or he didn't have the ability to put it away, to have a retirement fund. It went through hands like water. And that's what it seems you're describing DJ Carey. He's ripping people off, but the money is just gone. And
then there's low points. So there are points when he's in an apartment that he was renting, and it's not like, you know, a swanky penthouse. I rang somebody and I said, look, was he in the penthouse in McDonough Junction shopping centre, beside the shopping centre in Kilkenny? And the person said, Eimear, now, hardly a penthouse. Like, come on now. This is a come down. He would have been living, we think, in Dennis O'Brien's property in Ballsbridge for a period of over a year, maybe 15 months or so. And from there, when he packed up, he moved back to Kilkenny. There was a short period when he was a sofa surfer, you might say, relying on the kindness of somebody close to home. And then he got an apartment, or rented an apartment at McDonough Junction, very normal place, a 2-bed place. And it was just there that people who I know would have observed, there were times when the place was in darkness. He was supposed to be in Seattle getting treatment, and there was no signs of life. So I wonder where he was. And...
or was he just there with the lights off?
Who knows?
Did you delve into the psychology of all this at all?
I was fascinated by what was going on. Yeah, looking for answers, wondering, like, what if DJ Carey is, you know, seriously ill? If there's something there, what has motivated him? What's behind this? Absolutely. And I started reading about medical deception. Munchausen's, and I like a good podcast. I actually love this podcast. But also I'd listen to some of the podcasts about Belle Gibson, cancer scammer, and some of these kind of things, medical deception, you know. And so I contacted Dr. Mark Feldman. He wrote a book about people who feign illness, about factitious disorders. And I asked him, he was very kind with his time. He didn't know me at all. I sent him an email. I asked him, would he do a Zoom? He obliged. We had some back and forth about DJ Carey. I told him as much as I could. He said to me, you need to look at the early childhood. You need to look on the mother's side, that sometimes there can be, and he can't say in relation to DJ, never sat with them, but sometimes that is where you might see something. And with sociopathy or with antisocial personality type, that sometimes that's where you find the answers. So to delve more into the early life. And he said, more than likely, look, in a case like this, DJ's primary motivation, by the looks of it, was money, so that it's textbook fraud or criminality. That's the signs. But not to say he doesn't have a coexisting thing going on. Not to say what you said, does he get a kick out of it? Possibly. Does he sometimes believe that he is ill or he has an illness? I'm not sure. The difference here, you see, is meticulous planning. So this is willful and conscious behaviour. He had to think about what he was doing. So contrary to the stories I was given about him being a pleb or not the smart, not the brightest spark, all these little phrases of Walter Mitty, you know, he put a lot of time into this. He put a lot of time into this.
And profiled his victims.
I think so, absolutely. And I wonder as well, did he like getting one up on people who were smarter than him? I'm not sure. I don't know. These are questions really that are still hanging in the air. But I did think it was worth asking somebody, an expert on what's going on here. What do you think? And, you know, prisons are full of people like DJ Carey. They lack empathy.
They can also get on really well in prison because they bring to the table certain skills. You know, they're able to make friends actually and charm. Because, I mean, DJ Carey was obviously very charming. He was obviously able to charm people. He wasn't a dull character.
He was, but I would say they'd worry about DJ and the general prison population because he used cancer as a way to deceive people. So we're not dealing with an ordinary con man, and we're also not dealing even with somebody who is a person who the guilty of medical deception. It actually goes a little bit further with DJ because he's those two things plus, because he honed in on people very close to home, people who adored him, people who loved him, people who trusted him. And that's where I think people will find it very hard to trust DJ Carey ever again.
I think people in the outside world definitely will. But he could find himself being quite popular in prison. That kind of a mind, that sort of conniving, calculated mind can apply itself sometimes to the legal process, for example. And, you know, somebody like DJ Carey who can read and who can do, there's certain skill sets that we take for granted, but sometimes people in prisons don't have them. They have had, you know, they've been brought up and they have lost out on opportunities for education and things like that. And somebody like DJ Carey could actually become a little bit of a superstar in prison, believe it or not. He's obviously got a skill set as well that he's able to exist alone. He's able to feed off other people. But like you described that 7 weeks in a hotel on your own, I would go out of my mind.
Yeah,
I mean,
he has these little quirks maybe where, and I'm going back again to two things going on. So on the one hand, like the GAA yearbooks were brilliant. There was so much information in them. Reporters for years giving insights like Enda McAvoy, sports journalists. So little things about DJ being such a good team player. Like unbelievable. I'm talking about on the field for setting something up for somebody else to come in and tap it in. An excellent team player. But in real life, he didn't have that relationship and bond with the others. Even on the school bus, he'd sit up with the teachers when the lads were down the back. And if you think about Kilkenny hurlers, like Langton's and Kilkenny, all the, all the women, when the hurlers would come in, they're celebrities.
Yes.
We'd all want to get photographs back in the day. I mean, the profile, people wanted to be seen with them. DJ wasn't a drinker and he wasn't wild. You know, he didn't go on these big mad nights out.
Bit of an outsider.
And I can understand his teammates' reticence because there's that loyalty there because of what happened on the field and that. But I know that there were odd things and I know they know about the odd things too and they would have seen them.
Yeah, and a fascinating character. Final question. Give me your book as well so I can throw it up here for anybody. We can see that. The Dodger. DJ Carey and the Great Betrayal by Eimear Ni Bhraonáin. Who published this for you?
Merrion Press.
Merrion Press. Good for Merrion Press. What a story. What a book. It's definitely one for Christmas stockings. We're going to start talking about at this stage. But romance fraud? Any of that in evidence?
Not in evidence, but I have met people who were in, we'll call them situationships, because relationship might be a strong word to use when they thought that they were in love with somebody who told them he was dying of cancer. So you can imagine yourself the trauma that goes with that.
Yeah. That
you were in a relationship and from very early on you were told, he told women, I'm dying of cancer. So that's tough. And when I said earlier, he gets very creative. So in relationships, there were times when people noticed odd things. He had no eyebrows, he shaved his head, but he had hair on his legs. There were times when people were worried he'd be radioactive after treatment, but DJ had an appetite for sex.
Just an absolutely, a fascinating character, let's say that. And somebody who, on the outside or on the face of it, you go back those years we're talking about when he was on the pitch, nobody could have ever believed that he was going to end up behind bars. And for 5.5 years, long sentence for somebody like him to have to serve when he has never been in the prison system before. But Eimear, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really fascinating story. So everybody get out there and buy that book. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.